Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the powdered wig of history, specifically a Tudor-era dressing room where beauty routines could double as assassination attempts. Picture this: you're clutching a hand mirror carved from Iberian obsidian, its surface reflecting candlelight and impending poor life choices. That ghostly pallor everyone's rocking, not natural, definitely not healthy, and you probably won't survive this episode without compulsively checking your foundation ingredients. But let's dive in anyway. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. My favorite parts, imagining all of us scattered across time zones, collectively side-eyeing Queen Elizabeth's skincare regime. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The air hits you first, thick with rosemary steam and the tang of fermenting egg whites. You're in a Westminster Palace anteroom, circa 1572, where ladies-in-waiting grind lead pellets into powder using mortar and pestles. Each crunch grates your teeth like chewing foil. A maid offers you a pomander ball stuffed with ambergris. It does nothing to mask the vinegar-sharp stink of Ceruse paste. You know, that classic virginal glow starter pack: 50% eggshell ash, 50% white lead, 100% guaranteed organ failure. Over by the stained glass window, a red-nosed physician waves garlic cloves at the Queen's favorite cosmetician. The Spanish call it albayalde, the silent killer. He hisses, flecking spittle onto an unfinished eggshell mosaic. The artist just smirks, layering another dollop of lead paste onto a noblewoman's cheeks. Vanity trumps survival instincts here. Have you ever related harder to historical figures? Here's the bleak math they taught noble girls. Pallid skin equals wealth, purity, and that ever-elusive fuckboy repellent known as chastity. Sun-kissed cheeks, coded as commoner labor core, so they slathered themselves in this bone-white sludge daily, the Elizabethan equivalent of filtering your selfies into uncanny valley. Mainstream fact incoming: the Queen herself used Venetian Ceruse for over 4 decades. Her iconic portrait glow literally flaking off in chunks during bad humidity days. Now the quirky tidbit your history teacher kept secret. Some courtiers mixed their lead paste with literal ground alabaster for extra shimmer. Found a recipe from 1589 advising 3 drops of virgin's urine to prevent pustules. Spoiler, it did not prevent pustules, just added that authentic Tudor ode to desperation. Watch your step, that's Lady Suffolk crawling toward the chamber pot, her ceruse-cracked lips staining the rushes with blackened saliva. Court whispers say she bathed in ass's milk fortnightly to draw out toxins. Pro tip: when your detox bath requires livestock, maybe reconsider the facial cream. Historians still argue whether Elizabeth knew the risks. Sure, physicians griped about lead's corrosive humor, Renaissance skincare was a buffet of horrors. Mercury hair dye, arsenic-laced rouge, mascara made from soot and bread crusts, maybe mortality, just seemed like a reasonable spa upcharge. You drift past a kneeling perfumer rubbing civet musk into the queen's gloves to mask the necrosis. It's not working. Between the lavender sachets and rotting flesh undertones, the air feels like a bath and body works set in a morgue. Someone shoves a pomander into your hand, clove-studded, reeking of nutmeg. You pocket it. Souvenirs are grim here, but technically biodegradable. A door creaks open. Moonlight slices through the Ceruse fog, revealing the Virgin Queen herself, face painted smoother than a porcelain doll, neck wrapped in lace to hide the scabs. Her gaze fixes on you. "Does it trouble thee?" she rasps. "This art we wield against time's ravages." Before you can answer, a page boy sneezes, scattering lily pollen across her wig. She whirls away, kabuki white complexion cracking at the jawline. This is Tudor beauty, a death mask applied wet, layer by desperate layer. The real horror. You glance at your own reflection in a passing salver. For a heartbeat, your cheeks look suspiciously porcelain. Wind rattles the lead casement windows. A dog howls in the distance, probably just rabid. But go ahead and pretend it's symbolism. Somewhere down the hall, a physician's plea about blackened gums dissolves into drunken sobs. You edge toward the exit, stepping over a dropped recipe scroll. Its title gleams in the gutter. How to preserve youthful countenance through the judicious use of quicksilver. The last thing you hear, a giggle from the cosmetics alcove. Two maids whisper. Mistress Cavendish swears urine smooths the complexion. They're mixing a fresh batch of Ceruse, fingers blistered from lye. You'll dream about that laughter later, high-pitched, cloying, flecked with the metallic aftertaste of a culture choosing poison over obscurity. Outside, a bell tolls midnight. Your hand brushes against the pomander in your pocket. The cloves feel sharp through the velvet, like little teeth. Like a warning, you'll try to remember tomorrow, staring at your bathroom shelf, wondering which modern vanity might someday land you in a documentary. You push open a creaking oak door, the stench of vinegar sharp enough to make your eyes water. 3 men in ash-stained aprons pound eggshells into dust, their pestles clattering like skeletal fingers on marble. This is the White Lion Guild's secret workshop, a soot-blackened room where beauty gets brewed into poison. A boy no older than 12 stirs a lead vinegar slurry in a copper vat, his forearms blistered from splashes. Venice Ceruse, they call this paste, though there's nothing Venetian about its recipe. History books will later credit the Italians. But truth, this grimy London basement supplied half the royal courts in Europe. The guild's ledger cracked open on a barrelhead, lists ingredients in jagged Latin, plumbum album for lead, ovum testa for eggshells, rose marinus for the rosemary oil that barely masks the rot. You lean closer to the vat. Its surface glistens like wet chalk. A guildsman tosses in mercury-soaked alum crystals, their chemical hiss popping in the air. Makes the paste stick through mass tears, he mutters to his apprentice. Court ladies demand their makeup survives 12-hour sermons. Never mind that the mercury eats through leather gloves. Over in the drying room, poisoned canvases flutter, linen rags coated in ceruse, left to cure beside arsenic-laced rosewater vials. Tudor makeup removal involved scrubbing with whatever didn't stain, up to and including urine-soaked sponges, the Guild solution. Rosewater spiked with enough arsenic to kill a stable's worth of rats. Stings less than chambermaid piss, one alchemist brags, dunking his own redness raw hands into the mixture. Brother Cedric, the guildmaster, sifts white lead powder through a silk sieve, his cough rattling like pebbles in a tin. Historians still argue whether these alchemists understood the slow murder in their mortars. Cedric's journal offers clues, margins sketches of fanged skulls, a recipe annotated with beware the ghost fluid that haunts the bones. But when Spanish merchants triple their order, he writes only of hiring more orphans to grind nightshade into blush. A maid arrives with the queen's latest request, 2 extra jars of ceruse, thickened with mother's milk. The guild charges triple for that formulation, though their wet nurse is a gin-drinking crone from Cheapside. You watch them label the jars with Elizabeth's personal sigil, a phoenix drowning in its own ashes. As dusk stains the windows blood orange, apprentices squint at their work by candlelight. One stirs animal fat into lip salve, oblivious to the frog-spawn mold blooming along the rim. Another uses his teeth to uncork a wine flask, his front 2 teeth already gray from tasting lead tin alloys. They joke about the white lion curse, how every guildmaster dies gripping his own throat. Their laughter dies when Cedric walks past, his breath wheezing like a broken bellows. You pocket a dropped recipe scrap as you leave for lasting pallor. Mix lead oxide with the rest is illegible, stained by what smells suspiciously like royal urine. Modern chemists will later find this fragment and shudder. Lead oxide soaked in ammonia makes literal death a topical cream. But tonight, those alchemists clink pewter mugs to another profitable quarter, their teeth already edged in black. The moon rises over Thames sludge as the last apprentice douses the forge. Somewhere upstairs, a guildman's wife applies fresh ceruse to her cheeks, wondering why her reflection wavers in the glass. Her cat licks spilled powder off the floor tomorrow. It'll convulse beneath the hearth. But that's a problem for sunrise. The workshop's back room reeks of burnt sugar and rotting eggs, a side effect of boiling lead ore in vinegar. A scrawny apprentice named Tom scrapes a crusted spoon across a copper pot, his face smudged with soot. 3 parts mercury to 1 part eggshell, he mutters, tossing another handful of crushed shells into the mix. The guild's secret recipe isn't so secret. Half the court alchemists use the same formula, though none admit it. Near the smoldering hearth, a stack of cracked clay jars holds the guild's real treasure, aqua regia, a corrosive brew of nitric and hydrochloric acid. For dissolving gold, explains Brother Cedric, though everyone knows it's mostly used to clean the rust off nobles' armor. A faded ledger page pinned to the wall lists ingredients in smudged ink: dragon's blood, mercury sulfide; Venus's tears, lead acetate; and widow's lament, arsenic trioxide. The last entry, king's laughter, remains a mystery, though the apprentices joke it's just cheap Spanish wine. A commotion erupts as a red-faced merchant storms in, waving a jar of lumpy ceruse. This batch curdled the Duchess of Suffolk's face, he shouts. Cedric inspects the clotted paste, shrugs, and dumps in a handful of chalk. Tell her it's a new Venetian formula. Adds radiance. The merchant hesitates, then pockets a silver coin slipped into his palm. In the corner, 2 apprentices play dice with mercury droplets, rolling them across a warped table. Heads, you drink the nightshade tonic, dares one, pointing to a vial of murky liquid. The other scoffs. Tails, you lick the lead spoon. Their game ends when Cedric hurls a clay pot at the wall, showering them with shards. Back to work, or I'll sell your teeth for tooth powder. As midnight nears, a cloaked figure slips in Lady Marjorie, the Queen's chief tiring woman. She uncurls a gloved hand, revealing a vial of the Queen's own blood, still warm, still clotted with ceruse. His Majesty requires a stronger mix, she demands. One that persuades the Spanish envoy of her vigor. Brother Cedric bows, already stirring mercury into the brew. The vial empties, and history thickens. The morning sun slants through the leaded glass of the Queen's chambers, catching motes of dust, or is it powdered lead, drifting above a small table. You're standing in the heart of the ritual, the daily crafting of Elizabeth's Virgin's mask. A maid, her hands gloved in thin linen, grinds a chalky lump of ceruse into a bowl. The scent of vinegar bites your nose, sharp, acidic, as she mixes the poison paste. 3 times she strains it through silk, each pass meant to purify the mixture. As if silk could filter out death, you watch as the maid's fingers tremble, the bowl's edge clinking against the table. She adds a drizzle of rosewater, the fragrance clashing with the metallic tang. For the Queen's radiance, she mutters, though her voice cracks. The recipe's a relic of the White Lion Guild's alchemy: egg whites, vinegar, and enough lead to kill a horse. But here's the kicker. Court physicians swore the triple straining made it safe. Safe, a word that meant slow in Tudor England. When the Queen enters, her face is bare, the skin beneath her eyes bruised from sleepless nights. The maid dips a brush into the ceruse, the bristles glistening like wet bone. First stroke, the forehead, the paste clings thick, a second skin hardening as it dries. You notice the Queen's jaw tighten, a flicker of pain as the lead seeps into pores. Second stroke, the cheeks. The maid works quickly, layering the mask, each pass erasing wrinkles, scars, the map of a queen's exhaustion. Third stroke, the neck. Here, the skin's thinner. The ceruse cracks at the edges, a spiderweb of deceit. A servant offers a pomander stuffed with cloves and rosemary. Elizabeth inhales, the spices masking the vinegar's sting. You catch a glimpse of her reflection in a hand mirror, a porcelain doll, flawless and frozen. But the truth's in the details, the maid's fingertips stained white, the faint tremor in the queen's left hand, hidden beneath her sleeve. Early signs, now the eyebrows, a swan's feather dipped in lamp-black arches over each eye. The queen's gaze sharpens a predator stare. Last, the lips, a stain of crushed cochineal beetles. The color of life, she says, though her mouth barely moves. Here's the twist no one mentions. That triple straining ritual, useless. Modern chemists found lead particles in ceruse, samples smaller than silk's weave. The guilds knew. Maybe. Or maybe they just hoped. Historians still bicker over whether the straining was theater, a placebo for the makers, as much as the queen. A way to pretend they weren't painting a coffin onto her face. The maid steps back, her apron flecked with white. The queen rises, her mask complete. For now, the illusion holds a marble monument to power, its cracks papered over with eggshell ash and denial. The first twinge comes during a mask, her fingers stiffening around a golden goblet. Elizabeth laughs it off as chilled wine numbing her joints. But you see the truth in the tremor that sloshes crimson droplets onto her lily-white sleeve. Lead doesn't roar, it whispers. By week's end, the queen's meals taste perpetually of tin. Cooks add extra saffron to venison, cardamom to pears. Nothing masks the metallic tang. Her physicians diagnose black bile excess and prescribe rhubarb syrups. You watch as they bleed her with silver lancets, the blood's edge crusting white like spoiled milk. Irony's a fickle jester. They draw poison by adding more. Her radiant composure becomes a palace punchline. Ladies in waiting titter behind tapestries when Elizabeth misnames ambassadors, her once razor memory blurring at the edges. A ledger from December 1592 notes 12 replacements for broken mirrors. But court gossip claims the queen shattered them herself after glimpsing cracks in her ceruse facade. Here's the science your nose already knows. Lead bonds to calcium. It hollows bones, fogs minds, curdles guts. But Tudor England blamed moon phases and sour humors. When Elizabeth's hair thins, her wigmaker weaves in horsehair dyed with walnut shells. When her gums blacken, the Royal College of Physicians recommends chewing live snails. Their slippery vigor shall restore vitality. Spoiler, it doesn't. You linger in the privy chamber as dawn pales the stained glass windows. Elizabeth examines her hands, nails blued as storm clouds, through a smoked quartz lens. A passing fatigue, she snaps at Dr. Burcott, who's suggesting, gently, sweating through his ruff, a month's retirement to Cheltenham's healing springs. The real cure, stop the Ceruse. But denying the mask would crack her myth, the ageless virgin queen, so she orders doubled applications. Enter the rogue variable, arsenic. To revive her fading blush, the White Lion Guild spikes her rouge with it. Now, two poisons waltz in her veins, leads slow tango and arsenic's jagged reel. Her bedsheets tell the tale, sweat-stained silhouettes, each one a Rorschach of decay. Historians still argue whether Robert Cecil manipulated her growing confusion to control state affairs. A 1601 exchequer scroll lists payments to a Dr. Mithridates for dragon's blood tonics, likely arsenic antidote experiments, but nothing stemmed the tide. By winter, Elizabeth's parlor games turn sinister. She names her fingers the 10 traitors and swears they plot with Spain. You're there when she receives the French ambassador. Her ceruse has yellowed like ancient parchment, eyes sunken into Leeds gray halo. She quotes Cicero between labored breaths, each Latin phrase punctured by a cough. The envoy kneels, nostrils flaring at her necrosis sweet scent. Later, he'll write that England's queen resembles a fresco in a rainstorm, but today he praises her timeless grace. Power, even fading, commands its own fiction. Crimson worsted curtains frame her final act. Elizabeth paces nonsuch palace's long gallery, 7 turns each hour, as if motion might outrun decay. Her ladies mimic the ritual, their own lead-thickened faces cracking like dried riverbeds. When she collapses, they blame the summer heat. When she wakes screaming of glass shards in the marrow, they send for the exorcist. The remedy, more poison. Apothecaries compound opium-laced Malmsey wine. You watch her sip it, the goblet's rim imprinting a white crescent on her lips. For a few groggy hours, she's Gloriana again, rehearsing speeches to phantom parliaments, chiding Leicester's ghost for tardiness. Then the pain returns, a fire in the bones. Her last coherent order bans all clocks from her chambers. Can't have ticking reminders of time's victory. Servants hide hourglasses in velvet sacks. Sundials get draped like widows. Only the lead remains steady, patient, etching its chronicle into flesh. When she dies at 70, the physicians will call it a congestion of vapors. You'll know better. It's the final flake of the mask, falling at last. The air in the Queen's chambers reeks of vinegar and desperation. You watch as Lady Margaret, a lady in waiting with a laugh like a rusty hinge, dabs a paste of arsenic and rosewater onto her neck. Her hands tremble not from fear, but from the same poison she's smearing into her skin. A small price for a complexion like the Queen's, she mutters to her reflection, ignoring the raw patches where the arsenic has eaten through her collarbone. The court's new beauty standard isn't just toxic, it's contagious. By week's end, the palace corridors hum with a chorus of coughs. Servants sweep up flakes of ceruse, dust from the floors, their own faces smudged with the same white powder they're cleaning. A scullery maid named Agnes, barely 16, with a rash blooming across her cheeks, trades a month's wages for a vial of Venetian snow from an apothecary's apprentice. It's mostly chalk and mercury. She'll be dead by Easter, but tonight she's the envy of the laundry room. The real madness starts when the Queen's cousin, Lady Catherine Grey, arrives with a retinue of ladies wearing lead-based moon cream, so thick it cracks when they smile. Rumor claims the recipe includes crushed pearls and dove's blood, a myth that sends jewelers scrambling to meet demand. The dove's blood is actually beetroot juice, but no one's telling. You overhear a goldsmith in the courtyard haggling over a shipment of fake pearls from Venice. His breath reeking of the garlic he chews to ward off poisons my asthma. It doesn't work. Here's the open secret everyone ignores. Arsenic doesn't just whiten skin, it preserves it. A visiting physician from Padua dissects a deceased courtier and finds her organs pickled like a winter pear. The reports buried faster than the body. Meanwhile, the Queen's tailor sews extra lace onto her gowns to hide the tremor in her hands, while her wine steward spikes her claret with powdered rhubarb to balance the humors. Spoiler: it just gives her diarrhea. The court's obsession reaches its peak during the Feast of St. Agnes, when 70 ladies-in-waiting parade as virginal specters, their faces slathered in ceruse, so thick it glows like grave lichen under torchlight. The Queen herself wears a mask of mercury-laced alabaster, its surface etched with Bible verses, a literal holy facade. By midnight, 3 women collapse, vomiting white slurry onto the rushes. Their convulsions sink to the choir's hymn, a perverse liturgy, as physicians scuttle forward with leeches and rosewater. By dawn, the event is rebranded, the mask of heavenly fortitude, history rewritten before the bodies cool. The air in the royal physician's chambers hangs thick with the sharp tang of crushed mint and the metallic bite of blood. You watch as Dr. Ambrose Burcott grinds fresh herbs with a mortar and pestle, his hands trembling slightly beneath his ink-stained sleeves. The poultice he's preparing smells deceptively innocent, like a summer garden, not a desperate attempt to mask the rot creeping through the Queen's body. The mint will cool the inflammation, he mutters to his apprentice, though both know it's a lie. The blackened gums and oozing sores spreading across Her Majesty's skin aren't caused by humoral imbalance. They're the price of a decade spent painting her face with lead-laced ceruse. You lean closer as Burcott dips a linen strip into the greenish paste. The Queen's latest treatment involves wrapping her hands in these mint-soaked bandages each night, a ritual that leaves her chambers smelling like a confectioner's shop. It's theater, pure and simple. The real cure would require stripping away the toxic cosmetics poisoning her bloodstream. But no one dares suggest it. To remove the Queen's mask would be to strip her of the ageless porcelain visage that's become synonymous with her power. The physician's dilemma plays out in the margins of his leather-bound journal. Between notes on fever treatments and apothecary orders, You find sketches of a skeletal hand clutching a crown, a doodle he quickly scratches out. Burkott knows the truth. The same lead that's preserved Elizabeth's ivory complexion now eats through her bones. Last week, he'd found flecks of tooth enamel in her morning porridge. Yesterday, a lock of her hair came loose in his fingers during an examination. Yet, when the Privy Council demands updates on the Queen's health, Burkott bows and recites the official line. Her Majesty suffers a minor imbalance of the sanguine humor, he declares, ignoring the way her breath rasps like a rusted hinge. The court physicians nod along, their own hands stained with the same ceruse they prescribe. You catch the way Burkott's gaze lingers on the Queen's wine goblet at supper, how he watches her sip from a cup lined with powdered pearls, another remedy that's slowly calcifying her kidneys. The charade cracks during a midnight summons to the royal bedchamber. You're there when Elizabeth claws at her neck, her once steady voice reduced to a wheeze. "Why does it burn so, doctor?" she demands, thrusting a hand toward him. The skin peels away like parchment, revealing raw flesh beneath. Burkott's prescribed mint poultice dangles from her wrist, its herbs long since crusted with blood and pus. For one breathless moment, the truth hovers in the air between them. The physician's fingers twitch toward the jar of mercury ointment on the bedside table, the one he's used for years to treat the sores. Then Elizabeth fixes him with that hawkish stare, the one that's cowed ambassadors and silenced rebellions. "You'll not speak of this," she rasps. "It's not a request." You follow Burkott back to his study, where he uncorks a bottle of Momsey wine with shaking hands. The room reeks of desperation and dried herbs. On the shelf behind him, a row of glass jars holds specimens that tell the real story. A molar blackened by lead poisoning, a lock of hair brittle as straw, a sliver of bone that crumbled during an examination. The physician takes a long pull from the bottle, then dips his quill in ink. Treatment, continued application of cooling unguents, he writes, the words blurring as a drop of wine splatters the parchment. The next morning brings a delegation of London's most respected physicians. They crowd around the Queen's bed, debating whether to bleed her or apply leeches. You watch Burkott hover at the edge of the group, silent as a ghost, when a young doctor from Cambridge suggests discontinuing the ceruse. The room goes still. The Queen's chief lady-in-waiting steps forward, her face a mask of white lead and crushed pearls. Her Majesty's complexion remains the envy of Christendom, she snaps. Would you have her appear weak before the French? The debate ends when Elizabeth herself raises a trembling hand. Enough, she croaks. The physicians scatter like startled crows, leaving Burkott to apply a fresh poultice as he wraps her fingers in mint-soaked linen. You notice the way his thumb brushes against her signet ring, a fleeting contact that leaves a smear of greenish paste across the royal crest. That night, the physician does something unexpected. You watch as he unlocks a compartment beneath his apothecary table, withdrawing a vial of murky liquid labeled aquavity, a forbidden antidote brewed from crushed emeralds and nightshade. His hands tremble not from guilt, but hope. This might neutralize the lead festering in the queen's veins. But as he tips 3 drops into her claret, a shadow shifts in the corridor, the White Lion Guild's enforcer, sniffing for traitors who dare cure what they've been paid to poison. The palace banquet hall buzzes with the clatter of silver gilt platters and the low hum of diplomats sizing each other up like prize stallions. You slip between silk-clad courtiers as the French envoys make their entrance, their noses already wrinkling at the overwhelming scent of ambergris and decay. Elizabeth sits rigid on the dais, her face painted so thick with ceruse it could pass for Venetian plaster. That signature crimson wig tilts ever so slightly left, a detail only you notice. Having watched her hairdresser spike it with horsehair, patting all morning. Magnificent, no, whispers a lady-in-waiting beside you, gesturing to the queen's snow-pale décolletage. What she doesn't mention, what none dare acknowledge, are the moth-wing flutters of Elizabeth's right hand under the table, the same hand Burcott bandaged last night after another humoral episode. The ambassador from France dips into an exaggerated bow, all flourish and hidden sneer. You catch his sidelong glance at Elizabeth's neckline, where sweat begins carving rivulets through her lead-powdered skin. Historians will later record this as the 1572 Treaty of Blois negotiations, a fragile alliance against Spain. But right now, it's a high-stakes poker game where the queen's face is both her armor and her tells. Elizabeth gestures for wine, her sleeve slipping to reveal a bandage blooming yellow at the edges. The cupbearer freezes mid-pour as a muffled crack echoes through the hall. At first, you think it's a snapped lute string until you spot the fissure. A hairline split runs from her hairline to chin, bisecting the Virgin Queen's carefully constructed mask. Chaos unfolds in slow motion. The lead-based ceruse mixed that morning with vinegar. And if court gossip holds truth, a dash of crushed communion wafers for divine radiance doesn't so much melt as sublimate. Patches of white crust slew off her cheeks like plaster shedding from a damp wall. Beneath lies the reality. Angry red flesh pocked with mercury-induced sores. Marie de Beaumont, the youngest French envoy, drops her goblet. Claret spreads across the tablecloth like a bloodstain. Elizabeth's ladies-in-waiting swarm like worker bees, defending a wounded hive. 3 girls daub fresh ceruse with swan feather brushes. Another frantically grinds pearl powder with a mortar. You spot the exact moment lead paste touches raw skin. The queen's left eyelid twitches, but her smile never wavers. Does your majesty tire of our company? Purrs the French ambassador in accented English. His companions hide smirks behind lace cuffs. The Tudor rose pinned to his doublet mocks the room in silk shimmer crimson. What happens next becomes fodder for courtiers' gossip for decades. Elizabeth rises, a towering figure in cloth of gold, and launches into a flawless Latin counterargument. But poison makes for fickle allies. Mid-declamation, a pustule on her upper lip bursts, panic ripples through her retinue. A maid reaches to blot the fluid, but Elizabeth waves her off with a hand so skeletal. You glimpse the outline of metacarpals beneath thinning skin. The Queen's voice drops to a conspiratorial murmur that silences the room. Our French friends mistake perseverance for weakness. For one heart-stopping moment, the gambit works. Then a fly lands on her cheekbone, a common housefly, drawn by the sucrose mixed into her makeup. When it dips its proboscis into the weeping sore, even seasoned diplomats gag into their napkins. The ladies in waiting descend again, this time slathering ceruse straight from the jar. Their brushes work with the desperate energy of scribes, illuminating a doomed manuscript. You tally 12 layers in as many minutes, enough to stop a musket ball at 30 paces. Elizabeth's breathing grows labored under the paste. Each inhale whistling through mercury-ravaged sinuses. Shall we adjourn to the gardens? Suggests Lord Burghley through clenched teeth. It's a tactical retreat disguised as hospitality, getting the Queen into open air before she suffocates under her own facade. But the damage is done. As the procession files out, you linger near the French contingent. Une réunie en papier-mâché, mutters de Beaumont to her aide. Papier-mâché Queen. The phrase will appear in coded dispatches to Paris within the week. Back in the Privy Chamber, the royal makeup table resembles an alchemist's lab gone mad. 8 ceruse pots stand open, their lead-laden contents stirred with everything from rosewater to "You lean closer. Is that sheep's blood?" A junior maid mumbles about binding the humors. As she films a fresh layer over Elizabeth's neck ulcers, historians still argue whether what happened next stemmed from acute lead poisoning or political genius. As the sun dips below the palace walls, Elizabeth orders all mirrors removed from her chambers. "We need no glass," she rasps, dabbing ceruse into her hairline with steady hands. Our reflection lives in the fear of our enemies. By midnight, the French envoys ride hard for Dover, but not before their luggage acquires a curious addition. Buried beneath silk hose and cipher books lies a stolen ceruse pot, its interior still smeared with white. They'll gift it to Catherine de Medici's own poisoners, launching a toxic arms race that'll claim half the Valois court. In her bedchamber, Elizabeth drifts into fevered sleep. The last thing you see before the candle sputters out, a maid scrubbing half-dried ceruse from the Queen's pillowcase. Each scrape reveals embroidery beneath, a Tudor rose, its petals stained the permanent gray of weathered tombstone. The air in the Queen's chamber hangs thick with the cloying sweetness of rosewater, and something darker, a metallic tang that clings to the back of your throat. You're crouched behind a tapestry depicting the Battle of Agincourt, watching as Elizabeth's ladies-in-waiting scramble to obey her latest decree. Every mirror in the palace has been smashed or shrouded in black silk, save one. A smoke-treated obsidian slab propped on an ivory stand, its surface reflecting nothing but shadows. The queen paces before it like a caged wolf, her jeweled collar glinting under the flicker of beeswax candles. Up close, you see the rubies aren't just decorative. Each gem sits directly over a weeping sore on her neck, the stone's cold weight pressing gauze pads soaked in vinegar and crushed garlic into the festering wounds. Again she snaps, gesturing to the obsidian mirror. A trembling attendant named Marjorie steps forward, blowing smoke from a brass censer across the stone's surface. The haze swirls into a ghostly reflection. Elizabeth's face appears as if viewed through a thundercloud, the worst of her lesions blurred into a semblance of smooth skin. It's a trick borrowed from Venetian glassmakers, though rumor claims the technique was first used by Byzantine empresses to hide smallpox scars. The queen leans closer, her breath fogging the dark glass. Does it suffice? Marjorie hesitates a heartbeat too long. You see the queen's hand twitch toward the dagger she keeps tucked in her stomacher. Your Majesty's radiance outshines the very sun, the girl stammers, bobbing a curtsy so deep her knee brushes the rushes. Elizabeth's laugh rasps like a saw on bone. Liar, she murmurs, almost fondly, before sweeping toward the window. Outside, the Thames glints in the moonlight, a ribbon of mercury winding through sleeping London. Her fingers drift to the collar's clasp, nails blackened at the quick from years of handling lead-based cosmetics. They think me a fool, Marjorie. The French, the Scots, even my own council. A moth flutters against the glass, drawn to the candlelight. They whisper that my reign is built on smoke and mirrors. The attendant's eyes dart to a half-empty Ceruse pot on the dressing table. Its contents have taken on a faint greenish hue, a side effect of the copper sulfate added to mask the lead's bitter scent. You've heard the palace apothecary argue with the royal physician about the mixture. Their hissed debate over whether mercury or arsenic makes a better preservative echoing through the still room's vaulted ceilings. A sudden crash makes you jump. Elizabeth has swept her arm across the dressing table, sending pots of vermilion and ceruse clattering to the floor. A puddle of white paste oozes across the tiles, its surface iridescent with powdered pearl. Fetch the new batch, she commands, kicking aside a shard of shattered ceramic. The one with the essence of nightshade. Marjorie pales. The essence in question is a closely guarded recipe involving distilled belladonna berries, a trick stolen from Italian courtesans who used the poison to dilate their pupils for a doe-eyed look. Last week, a scullery maid accidentally spilled a single drop on her hand. Her arm still hangs in a sling from the violent muscle spasms that followed. As the attendant scurries out, Elizabeth sinks onto a stool upholstered in Flemish velvet. You notice her left leg jittering uncontrollably, a tremor that's become more pronounced since the incident with the Spanish ambassador's poisoned gloves. Her fingers pluck at the ruby nearest her collarbone, worrying the gem until a fresh bead of pus wells up beneath it. The stench hits you then, a nauseating cocktail of rotting flesh and clove oil. You can stop gawking now, the queen says without turning. Your blood turns to ice. She's addressing a painted portrait of her father, Henry VIII, that hangs askew on the far wall. The king's eyes seem to follow you as she continues. You always said I'd choke on my own pride. Well, look at me now, father. Look at what your precious England has made of its queen. The sound of returning footsteps saves you from discovering whether Tudor portraits can actually tusk in disapproval. Marjorie re-enters with a lead crystal vial, its contents the color of overripe plums. Elizabeth snatches it, downing the contents in one gulp. Within minutes, her pupils dilate to black saucers, windows into a void where vanity and venom waltz. Better, she slurs, admiring her reflection in a gilded dagger. Now the French will see a queen, not a corpse. The chapel reeks of incense and impending doom. Your nostrils flare at funeral lilies crushed underfoot. Midnight mass becomes theater of the grotesque. Stained glass apostles leer with Elizabeth's face, their jeweled robes dripping liquid shadows. Your neck prickles beneath an imaginary ruff, starched with corpse stiffness. She enters, or what's left of her. The Virgin Queen's once proud posture now lists like a storm-wrecked galleon. 6 layers of lead-laced ceruse cement her face into a death mask that creaks when she kneels. Historians agree she banned all looking glasses by 1602. But tonight's horror needs no mirror. Watch the way her gloved fingers cling to the poisoned chalice. Mercury-induced tremors slosh communion wine over the rim, a blood-dark stain spreading across sacramental linen. The chaplain's Latin falters when her laughter erupts, sharp and silver as a dagger drawn in chapel. Do you see them? She hisses at you, or the thing she thinks you are. The devils dance in my face cream there by the Momsey barrels. Your eyes follow her skeletal gesture. Candlelight flickers across ordinary wine casks, but delirium twists them into capering imps with lead-white faces. A mainstream fact buried in royal physician John Dee's diaries surfaces. Elizabeth demanded 6 Bible pages glued over the book of Revelation. During this period, the choir's hymn curdles into dissonance. Above the altar, stained glass transforms, Judas's face melts into Robert Dudley's, his 30 pieces of silver replaced by Venetian ducats. A quirky museum inventory note claims the actual Bible used that night bore raised wax seals shaped like doves, though 43 of 50 seals later tested positive for lead residue. She claws at her neckline, peeling away a garnet brooch to reveal ulcerated flesh. The mask of youth now cracks diagonally across her nose, a grand canyon of decaying vanity. You recall the white lion guilds, ledgers boasting their ceruse stayed, flexible for 8 hours of court pageantry. Flexibility apparently didn't prevent bacterial colonies blooming beneath. candle smoke thickens? Or is that the first wisp of delirium poisoning your own mind? A bishop's censer swings rhythmically left, right, left, its arc matching the tremors in Elizabeth's left eyelid. Historians still argue whether her final year hallucinations stemmed from lead-induced madness or brilliant political theater to distract from Spain's looming armada. She lurches upright, wine-soaked communion wafer clinging to her chin like a grotesque pustule. Fetch the Countess of Surrey. The command dissolves into wet coughing, each hack producing a handkerchief Rorschach of blood and flaking ceruse. Your boots stick to flagstones as you retreat. Was that always rosemary oil on the floor, or something loosened from the Queen's rotting slippers? Through the chapel door, a waiting maid grinds fresh lead powder with mortar and pestle. The RHYTHM Chinese letter to Elizabeth's labored breathing, strangest of all. That gilded Bible still exists, locked in Windsor's archives under 7 keys. X-rays show 5 hairline fractures in the spine directly beneath the glued-over pages about Babylon's fall. Coincidence? Or did the last Tudor monarch truly fear divine parallels to her crumbling reign? The air tastes metallic now, or maybe that's just imagination flavored by knowledge. As midnight bleeds into the perilous hours, you notice the Queen's remaining teeth glow faintly blue, an eerie radiance modern toxicologists confirm occurs in advanced lead poisoning. She collapses during the final Amen, a wilted marionette tangled in sacramental gold threads. Footmen rush forward with practiced precision, their white-painted faces identical to the Venetian Ceruse jar peeking from a bishop's sleeve. The chapel royal's last intact record notes 300 pounds of incense burned that night, and 1 altar boy pensioned off for screaming about skulls in the Queen's cheeks. When silence finally smothers the chaos, you spot it, a single teardrop of sweat rolling down her frozen makeup. It carves a meandering path through lead powder, a tiny river charting the erosion of empire. The physicians' college officially recorded this incident as faintness from pious fervor, though someone later scribbled, then scratched out the word venom in the margin. As dawn's first light defiles the stained glass, her ladies-in-waiting begin anew, dipping brushes into fresh ceruse. Their whispers tickle your ear like flies on spoiled meat, a touch more mercury, sulfide for luminosity. Her Majesty prefers the glow of archangels. You almost miss the Queen's final muffled shriek, her crumbling lips pressed against the Bible's poisoned pages. The chapel reeks of incense and impending doom. Your nostrils flare at funeral lilies crushed underfoot. Midnight Mass becomes theater of the grotesque. Stained glass apostles leer with Elizabeth's face, their jeweled robes dripping liquid shadow. Your neck prickles beneath an imaginary ruff, starched with corpse stiffness. She enters, or what's left of her. The Virgin Queen's once proud posture now lists like a storm-wrecked galleon. 6 layers of lead-laced ceruse cement her face into a death mask that creaks when she kneels. Historians agree she banned all looking glasses by 1602. But tonight's horror needs no mirror. Watch the way her gloved fingers cling to the poisoned chalice. Mercury-induced tremors slosh communion wine over the rim, a blood-dark stain spreading across sacramental linen. The chaplain's Latin falters when her laughter erupts, sharp and silver as a dagger drawn in chapel. Do you see them? She hisses at you, or the thing she thinks you are. The devils dance in my face cream there by the Momsey barrel. Your eyes follow her skeletal gesture. Candlelight flickers across ordinary wine casks, but delirium twists them into capering imps with lead-white faces. A mainstream fact buried in royal physician John Dee's diary surfaces. Elizabeth ordered 6 Bible pages glued over the book of Revelation during this period. Terrified its prophecies mirrored her unraveling reign. The choir's hymn curdles into dissonance. Above the altar, stained glass shifts. Judas's face melts into Robert Dudley's, 30 pieces of silver replaced by Venetian ducats, a quirky detail from a 1598 court inventory surfaces. The Bible used that night had wax seals shaped like doves, though 43 of 50 later tested positive for lead residue. She claws at her neckline, peeling away a garnet brooch to reveal ulcerated flesh. The mask of youth now cracks diagonally across her nose, a grand canyon of decaying vanity. You recall the White Lion Guild's ledgers boasting their Ceruse stayed, flexible for 8 hours of court pageantry. Flexibility, it seems, didn't prevent bacterial blooms beneath the paste. Candle smoke thickens. Or is that the first wisp of delirium poisoning your own mind? A bishop's censer swings rhythmically, its arc matching the tremor in Elizabeth's left eyelid. Historians still argue whether her hallucinations stemmed from lead toxicity or a calculated act to distract from Spain's looming armada. She lurches upright, a wine-soaked communion wafer clinging to her chin like a grotesque pustule. Fetch the Countess of Surrey. The command dissolves into wet coughs, each hack producing a handkerchief Rorschach of blood and flaking ceruse. Your boots stick to flagstones as you retreat. Was that rosemary oil on the floor or something leached from the Queen's rotting slippers? Through the chapel door, a maid grinds lead powder with a mortar and pestle, her rhythm synced to Elizabeth's labored breaths. Strangest of all, that gilded Bible remains in Windsor's archives. X-rays show hairline fractures beneath the glued pages about Babylon's fall. Coincidence, or did the last Tudor monarch fear divine parallels to her crumbling reign? The air tastes metallic now. As midnight bleeds into the dangerous hours, you notice the Queen's remaining teeth glow faintly blue, a telltale sign of advanced lead poisoning modern toxicologists recognize. She collapses during the final Amen, a marionette tangled in sacramental gold thread. Footmen rush forward, their white painted faces mirroring the Venetian ceruse, jar peeking from a bishop's sleeve. The chapel's records note 300 pounds of incense burned that night. And one altar boy pensionied off for screaming about skulls in the queen's cheeks. When silence smothers the chaos, you spot it, a single tear carving a path through her leaden makeup. The Physicians' College called it faintness from pious fervor, though someone later scribbled, then scratched out, venom in the margins. As dawn's light stains the stained glass, her ladies-in-waiting dip brushes into fresh ceruse. Their whispers tickle your ear like flies on spoiled meat. A touch more mercury for the archangel's glow. You almost miss the queen's final muffled shriek, her crumbling lips pressed to the Bible's poisoned pages. The flickering candlelight casts long shadows across the parchment as the royal scrivener's quill scratches out the truth in jagged ink. You're crouched in a cramped chamber beneath Westminster, the air thick with the metallic tang of blood and the earthy musk of decay. The autopsy report lies open before you, a gruesome ledger of Elizabeth's final secret. Her lungs, the scribe notes, are black as a Thames mudflat, her liver shriveled to a lump of coal. A stray rat skitters over your boot, drawn by the faint sweetness clinging to the queen's preserved heart. Even in death, it glistens with a ghostly pallor. The mercury and lead from decades of Ceruse treatments still trapped in its chambers. Upstairs, the Privy Council debates in hushed tones. Lord Cecil slams a fist on the oak table, scattering wax seals. "Burn it all," he growls, tossing the autopsy scroll into the hearth. The flames devour phrases like spleen resembling charred parchment, and brain matter the color of tarnished silver. But here's the kicker. The scribe's own notes reveal he made 2 copies. One for the fire, one hidden inside a hollowed-out Bible, wedged between Psalms and Proverbs. Your fingers brush the vellum, still faintly sticky with the same rosewater Elizabeth used to scent her deathbed sheets. The real scandal. That coal-black organ's line wasn't hyperbole. Modern talk screens would later confirm lead levels high enough to kill a horse. But here's the twist that'll make your eyebrows levitate. The scribe's hidden report mentions a single, intact gallstone found in the queen's liver. Not just any gallstone, a perfect sphere. Its surface etched with what looks like letters. Latin, maybe, or Greek. The scribe swears it vanished before he could decipher it, pocketed by a shadowy figure in a physician's robe. As for the council's cover-up, oh, they tried. But 3 days after the burning, every man who'd handled the original report developed a rash. Red welts, like tiny crowns, blooming across their hands. Coincidence? The court's new physician, a sharp-eyed Italian with a penchant for poison, called it a humor's imbalance. The kitchen staff whispered about a curse. You lean closer to the scribe's final line, ink smudged by what might have been sweat or a trembling hand. The queen's blood, when spilled, left stains no lie could lift. Historians still argue whether that gallstone was a medical oddity or a message, a final cryptic joke from a queen who turned her own body into a hall of mirrors. But here's the kicker they'll never admit. That night, as the last embers of the autopsy report died, a servant girl swears she saw Elizabeth's portrait in the long gallery. Wink, the stone walls press in like disapproving bishops as you shuffle into Brother Cedric's cell, a windowless cube that reeks of spoiled milk and regret. His fingers tap-rattle against a dog-eared ledger. Nails yellowed from decades of grinding lead into face paint. You'd think a master alchemist would have finer accommodations, but the White Lion Brotherhood never tolerated loose tongues. Especially not now, with their most devout member ready to sing. Cedric's voice rasps like mortar on brick. 3 queens, 12 ladies of the court, all dead before 40 winters. The ledger creaks open to a page smeared with what you hope is wine. Annabella of France, clove of garlic in her ceruse to purge ill humors. Gone by 26. Margaret of Austria, crushed pearls mixed double strength, coughing blood into silk kerchiefs within a year. His laugh rattles loose something in his chest. Poetry, really. The more they paid for our poisons, the faster it killed them. A draft snakes through the cell, flipping pages to a sketch of Elizabeth's death mask. The white finish, labeled Prima Materia 12. Eggshell vinegar, lead oxidized through 9 full moons. Your thumb brushes the parchment. It leaves a ghostly fingerprint. The paper still dusted with the Brotherhood's signature pigment. Historians still argue whether these guild records exaggerate their influence, but the metallic grit on your skin suggests otherwise. Cedric leans forward, chains clanking. Ever seen a noblewoman's corpse after 20 years in the Ceruse? Teeth black as sermon ink, fingernails curled like parchment near flame. We called it morbus regalis, the royal disease. Sounded better than rotted by your own vanity. His chuckle dies when a fit seizes him, shoulders jerking like a marionette with tangled strings. Spittle flies, etching tiny pits in the ledger's wood cover. Acidic, you notice his left eyelid droops at the corner, a dead giveaway of mercury poisoning. Quirky medical fact. Renaissance quacks called it the alchemist's wink. Cedric caught it in his 30s, back when he was still grinding malachite for emerald-eyed duchesses. Now he spits into a pewter bowl, the saliva swirling with flecks of silver. They'll tell you we were artists, pharmacists. Lies. We were gardeners, planting slow death in porcelain pots. A key scrapes in the lock. Cedric slams the ledger shut, but not before you glimpse a recipe titled Vinum Saturni, Wine of Lead. The Brotherhood's most infamous concoction. Mainstream history books will tell you royals drank it for its sweet taste, never guessing the melancholy vapors it cured or withdrawal symptoms from the lead itself. Bootsteps echo down the corridor. Cedric's quill flies across a fresh page, confessing sins faster than a drunkard's prayer. Tell them about the gallstone, he hisses. The one from the Queen's autopsy. Our greatest work, the quill snaps. a cloud of lead powder puffs from its hollow shaft, coating his tongue chalk white. His eyes bulge, not with fear, but something like pride. Guards burst in, halberds gleaming. Too late. Cedric's hand claws at his throat, etching bloody furrows across those damning ledger entries. His last wheeze carries a nursery rhyme alchemists taught their apprentices: silver to black, black to red, queen's face white, queen's face dead. The lead-smeared pages stick to your palms as you slip into the corridor. Behind you, a maid scrubs Cedric's vomit, already bleaching the stone floor snow white. Some secrets refuse to stay buried. The hum of fluorescent lights greets you in the museum's basement lab, its sterile glow bouncing off a CT scanner big enough to swallow a coffin. A technician adjusts her gloves, the latex snapping like Elizabethan stage effects. Prep the royal cranium fragments, someone says, and suddenly you're eye level with what's left of Tudor England's most famous skull. The bone glimmers, not with jewels or piety, but lead particles fused to calcium like malignant stars. Love a good historical irony. Modern conservationists once tried removing that spectral white residue with cotton swabs, until X-rays showed it wasn't dirt. It was the remains of her lifelong makeup ritual. 400-year-old Ceruse, still clinging like a jealous lover. Peer closer, those swirling streaks in her frontal bone, possible mercury, vapors infiltrating her brain during daily beauty practices. You're basically staring at a toxicology report written in calcium and hubris. Here's where reality gets soap opera juicy. That iconic death mask glowing in display cases turns out restorers over the centuries kept touching it up with fresh white paint, unknowingly reenacting the Queen's original self-poisoning. Conservator diaries from 1891 mention reviving Her Majesty's noble pallor using, wait for it, lead-based primers. History doesn't repeat, it does contouring. The scanner beeps. False color images bloom on screens, crimson lead deposits in her jawbone whispering of toothaches, masked by clove oil. Azure mercury trails map neural pathways like reverse constellations. One tech mutters about bioaccumulation, while another compares the data to modern opioid autopsies. The room smells of sanitizer and disintegrating myths. Fringe theory alert. Some material scientists swear UV lights reveal phosphorescence in her cranial fragments. They claim stored sunlight from palace windows interacted with the lead compounds, creating a faint glow during midnight lab tests. Peer-reviewed journals dismiss it, but night guards at the British Museum swap stories about the skull that shines when the fancy dress tour pass by. Now the ethical dilemma. Curators hover over the death mask display case like nervous parents. Do they leave the modern lead layers intact as part of the artifact story? Scrape them off to reveal the original, or add a mirror so viewers confront their own faces alongside Elizabeth's poisoned ideal? Historians still argue whether her makeup choices were desperate vanity or a calculated performance of ageless rule in a world where kings died from infected shaving nicks. A conservator's phone lights up with a TikTok trend, teens slathering on Tudor glam filters that pale their skin and crack digitally. Across the room, Elizabeth's death mask glows under LED spotlights, as radiant and artificial as the day they pried it from her mercury-stiffened face. The exhibit label remains unwritten, awaiting verdicts more delicate than the brushstrokes that killed a queen. The hum of fluorescent lights buzzes louder as you step closer to the glass case, your breath fogging the pain. Inside lies the death mask, its porcelain surface glowing with an almost supernatural pallor. You've seen the documentaries, read the history books, but nothing prepares you for the eerie charisma of that face. The same lead-laced ceruse that once clung to Elizabeth's living skin now calcifies her likeness in death. A ghostly echo of Tudor vanity. A museum label mentions the 16th century belief that Leeds toxicity could be balanced by rosewater. A desperate alchemy of beauty and poison. You almost laugh until you remember modern foundations still use titanium dioxide nanoparticles. A safer choice with its own unanswered questions. A tour guide nearby waves a UV flashlight over a replica skull fragment. "See those faint blue flecks," she says. Rumor has it the original glows under blacklight like a nightclub relic. Skeptics call it a hoax, but you've heard whispers from night staff how the display case sometimes flickers faintly when the security lights dim, as if the past refuses to stay buried. You lean in, half expecting the mask's lips to part, and whisper memento mori. The real drama unfolds in the conservation lab upstairs. A team in blue gloves debates over spectral imaging data. That 1890s lead layer is flaking, argues one, gesturing to a hologram of the mask's cross-section. But the original Tudor ceruse beneath is stable. If we peel the modern layers, we'll expose her true face. A conservator hesitates, her tweezers hovering. Or we'll just repeat history, scrubbing away lies, until all that's left is dust. The lab's fluorescent lights dim to a soft glow as the conservator leans closer, her gloved hands hovering above the mask. A brush, its bristles as fine as spider silk, grazes the edge of the porcelain, not to erase, but to cradle. The air hums with the quiet of a breath held too long. Across the room, a spectral image flickers on a screen, a ghostly map of the mask's fractures, each line a whisper of time. "We'll use a cellulose gel," murmurs another, her voice low as a lullaby. "Gentle. It'll lift the dust without touching the original." The mask lies still under their care, its once bright pallor softened by layers of patience. A droplet of distilled water glistens on the edge of a brush, trembling like a confession. The conservator pauses, aware that even now, 4 centuries later, they're still layering fiction onto bone. What's preservation, she wonders, but another kind of ceruse,